Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Buckeye Politics. It's me, your favorite Ohioan. Today, we're going to be analyzing Alaska's upcoming congressional district special election, as well as the Senate election. Right now, we're going to start off with the special election for the United States House. This is a race to replace Republican Representative Don Young, who died in March on a flight home. Now, Don Young was an absolute Chad. I didn't agree with all his political stances, but he was a really good guy. He was one of the few people in Washington, D.C. who was actually like a good representative of their constituents. He was always doing stuff back at home in Alaska, and he was just a really good guy. He was a great representative. He was a little bit more moderate of a Republican, and I didn't agree with him on every single vote, but he was certainly a good representative for the people of Alaska, and he was absolutely beloved there, so may he rest in peace. That said, we now have a special election to replace him, where Alaska, this is pretty much the first time Alaska is using their new voting system, and I don't like it at all. It's pretty cursed. Let me go down here and explain it to you. So back in, I believe it was May, Alaskans went to the polls, and they had this. The ballot they got looked like this. Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an Independent, you all got the same ballot, and it looked something like this. You had an entire sheet of candidates up and down the board. You got to vote for one singular person, I believe. Yes, you got to vote for one person, and you got to vote for a whole bunch of people. If you were a Republican, a Democrat, an Independent, no matter what, you got to vote for at least one of these people. The top four, the people of this entire blanket who got the four most votes, which were Sarah Palin, the former governor, who received 27% of the vote, Nick Bigich, I'm not sure he pronounced his name, Nick Bigich, I'm not sure he pronounced his name, I apologize. He got 19%. Al Gross, who was an independent, got 12%, and Mary Sattler Peltola got 10%. So the top four, Sarah Palin, Nick Bike, Al Gross, and Mary Sattler Peltola, they all advanced to the second round. As you can see here, if you look at polling, this is something we're going to look at in a second. The polling for the primary, Sarah Palin did not do very well. She was not polling very high. I mean, I think she outperformed the polls. And in the most recent poll, which was done, the only unbiased poll, this was a Republican internal, but so the only poll that was unbiased had Sarah Palin winning, but by a very slim margin. And she was only getting like 19% of the vote. She ended up overperforming that by like 8 points and getting 27%. That's going to be important for us to look at later. So I just want to say how much I do not like this system. Like, I suppose this is this blanket primary, kind of jungle primary, however you want to put it, kind of makes sense for primary elections. But for a general election and for everyone to vote for, this makes zero sense to me. And then, so the top four people here move on. So Sarah Palin, Nick Bigich, Al Gross, and Mary Sattler Peltola, the four of them move on to the general election. And as you can see here, Al Gross, who was the independent, he actually withdrew from the race, so it's now only a three-way race between Nick Bigich, Sarah Palin, and Mary Sattler Peltola. As you can see here, once again, the polls for the general election between these three seem to show Nick Bigich and Mary Sattler Peltola pretty much leading in the polls. Sarah Palin's actually not polling very well based on these polls we're seeing right now. But that said, as we just talked about earlier, if we go up to the general, Sarah Palin was also not performing very well in the polls for the primary election, and she still managed to win very easily. So if you come down here, adjust the polls for how they were back then Sarah Palin is probably in a very good position to win this election. That said, because of ranked choice voting, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how people rank each other. So for ranked choice voting, how it works is you get these three candidates, and you say, like, let's say you want Sarah Palin to be number one. You put Sarah Palin as 1, Nick Bigich as 2, and Mary Sattler Peltola as 3. So then the first round, your vote for Sarah Palin, and then if she doesn't make it, then it's your second vote goes to the next person, and so on and so forth. So it's just a really weird system. I think Maine and Alaska are the only states to use this system because it's supposed to make it more fair for like smaller parties to get on the ballot and get candidates. But all it really does is make the system really complicated. So I hope I explained that pretty well. So long story short, the three of these candidates will be competing in 3 sets of rounds basically to see who will be the next representative. This is a special election. So the winner of this will pretty much instantly go to Washington, and they'll be up again for election in November, but they'll be in Washington at least until then. So like I said, I do think Sarah Palin is the favorite in this race. She's a very narrow favorite because, as you can see here, she's not doing very well in the polling. She's not leading in any pollsters. But that said, she was pretty much in a dead heat in the primary, and she ended up winning pretty handily. She won by a pretty big margin. She won by like 8 points when she was basically in a tie and only up by like 2 or 3 in the primary. So I do think Sarah Palin is going to pull this out, although it is going to be pretty close. Not a whole lot to say there. I think Sarah Palin's going to be a great representative for the people of Alaska, and very cursed system. I'm not sure why they adopted this system, but long story short, it is going to look like Sarah Palin adopted this. Complicated, but it shouldn't be complicated, but it is. So now we're going to look at the Senate election, which is also pretty interesting to look at. This is where Lisa Murkowski, the incumbent U.S. senator, who is the most moderate liberal Republican I think out there. I think she's even more liberal than Susan Collins of Maine. Lisa Murkowski, I believe she voted with Joe Biden. I mean, not both Joe Biden. I believe she voted with Barack Obama roughly 60% of the time. Keep in mind, Alaska has not voted for a Democrat since I believe like 1964. Excuse me. Alaska has not voted for a Democrat since 1964, and yet Lisa Murkowski, who is a Republican, voted with Obama 60% of the time. She voted to impeach Trump, I believe, only once. She didn't vote. She didn't censor him. She didn't vote to impeach him the first time, but she did impeach Trump the second time. She's voted for gun control in Alaska. A Republican from Alaska voting for gun control. And the Republican Party of Alaska, which usually simps for her, and even back in 2010 when she got primaried out. So back in 2010, this is actually kind of funny. Lisa Murkowski has long been hated in Alaska. Back in 2010, she lost the Republican primary, so she was she's probably going to this time, and she ran. She basically complained it was a little bitch about it, and so the Alaska Republican Party said, okay. They screwed over the person who won the primary. This guy won the primary. He was basically set to be the Republican nominee, but Lisa Murkowski just was a whiny bitch about it, and because of that, the Alaska GOP, and because of her father as well, Lisa Murkowski's dad is Frank Murkowski, who is a longtime, who was the governor of Alaska, and also has a pretty high-ranking position with the Alaska GOP, and it's basically nepotism. She basically only has a career because of who her father is, and so she's just a corrupt, bureaucrat who literally only holds office because her dad shills for her. But long story short, the Alaska GOP has moved on from him, and they have officially censored Murkowski, and so she no longer has the GOP's backing. Back in 2010, when she first lost her primary, the Alaska Republican Party was still very much under the influence of her dad, Frank Murkowski, and Frank Murkowski made sure the Alaska GOP screwed over the guy who actually won the nomination, the person who the people of Alaska wanted to be their nominee. They screwed him over, and they got Lisa Murkowski to win a second term because they did like a write-in campaign, and they basically did not fund the Republican candidate at all. But this time that's not happening. The Republican Party of Alaska has censored Murkowski, and they have officially supported Donald Trump's pick, Kelly Tshibaka. Kelly Tshibaka is an America First candidate. She is solid on the issue. She's a great candidate. Let's go up and try to find her. Let's go to the Republican primary. Let's see. Kelly Tshibaka, she's the former commissioner of the Alaska Department of Administration. She's worked in the Alaska politics for a little while, but she's an America First fighter to the core. She's actually good on gun control. She's good on family values. She's socially conservative, unlike Murkowski. She's very good on gun control, and she'll probably be a little bit more libertarian on certain issues because it is Alaska. Alaska's a pretty libertarian-esque state. They're more moderate on social issues. They're very pro drilling, very pro-gun. They're also like relatively pro-choice. There's a pro-life movement, but Alaska, they're a very libertarian state, and so Kelly Tshibaka is going to be a great fit because she is a social conservative. She is good on gun control. She is good on drilling and the economics, but she's a little bit more moderate on certain issues. But she is still going to be a top 5, maybe even a top 10, maybe even top 5 senator. She's going to be a great senator. She's a strong supporter of Trump. Trump's held rallies for her, and I think she's going to go on to win this race pretty narrowly. It's going to be interesting because if we come down here, we look at who she's endorsed by. Lisa Murkowski is endorsed by George Bush, Larry Hogan, Susan Collins, John Cornyn, Kyrsten Sinema, a literal Democrat, is endorsing her. Pro-Israel America. Yeah, Tim Scott, Angus King, who's an independent, who's basically a Democrat. A bunch of very cringe people. But like half of Lisa Murkowski's endorsements come from Democrats, as you can see here, if you look at the state legislatures and U.S. senators. That said, Kelly Tshibaka is endorsed by Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, Charlie Kirk, Trump Jr., the Alaska GOP, the Oil and Gas Workers Association, the American Conservative Union, Campaign for Working Families. So overall, Kelly Tshibaka has very solid endorsements, and she is definitely the much better candidate. And I think Lisa Murkowski is going to go down because they use ranked choice voting. This is going to be a kind of an interesting election to look at. As you can see, if we look at polling, Kelly Tshibaka does have a solid lead because Kelly Tshibaka is currently and let's see, she's in the first round she would win, second round she would win, third round she's like loses very narrowly, but it is very close. And Lisa Murkowski does not have any support among the GOP. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere Lisa Murkowski only has the support of like I think 15% of Republicans, Lisa Murkowski's approval rating among Republicans in Alaska is only like 15%. And if a Democrat does advance, which it looks like they're going to, Democrats aren't going to vote for Lisa Murkowski. They're going to vote for the Democrat. I mean, I'm sure some will probably vote for Murkowski, but the majority are certainly going to vote for the Democrat. So if Lisa Murkowski, Kelly Tshibaka, and a Democrat, if it's three Republicans and just one Democrat, then I think we're in a very good position because the Democrats are all going to vote for their nominee. Meanwhile, Republicans are probably all going to vote for Kelly Tshibaka because, like I said, Lisa Murkowski only has like a 15 to 20% approval rating among Republicans. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm sure some independents are going to vote for Lisa Murkowski, but it's Alaska. How many independent voters live in Alaska and know enough to turn out for Lisa Murkowski in huge numbers? Probably not many. I think your average Republican is going to vote for Kelly Tshibaka because Trump's been up there campaigning with her, and Kelly Tshibaka's run a really good campaign, and she has pretty much the support of the entire Alaska GOP. Meanwhile, Lisa Murkowski's basically just running on, look, I've been your senator for a long time, and I voted for gun control, and I'm socially liberal, and I voted for Obama with like 60% of the time, and I love Joe Biden. Yeah, good luck with that in Alaska. The state Trump won by like 10 points. So yeah, I do think in the end, this is just the primary election. The top four will advance. I think Lisa Murkowski is going to advance, probably. Lisa Murkowski is definitely going to advance. Kelly Tshibaka is probably also definitely going to advance. But we really want to look at is how well Murkowski does. If she only like barely advances, if she gets like second or third or maybe even fourth place, then she's in a very bad spot, and we're in a very good spot. That means Kelly Tshibaka is probably going to win this race. If Lisa Murkowski, however, does pretty well, then we may have a little bit of a may have a pretty close election on our hands. That said, unfortunately, we're probably not going to know the results of either of these races until a few weeks later because of the stupid system Alaska uses in terms of, like, ranked choice voting and the blanket primary and whatever. They said the state of Alaska actually said we probably won't know the results for a couple of weeks after the election. So that's great to hear, great to see. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like and subscribe for more. If you live in Alaska, get out there and vote for Sarah Palin and Kelly Tshibaka. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.